Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Holmes, and I hope you're enjoying your day so far. This is always one of my favorite days of the year. I go home feeling so renewed and uplifted. When Jan talked to me about doing this session on keeping the faith, I said sure, because I felt led to do something. But after looking back over my life, all of my life, and not just the last 12 years, I realized that faith had kept me more than I had kept faith. I was taught faith and watched faith, learned faith from my grandmother. And the first verse that she ever taught me about faith and about God was Psalms 139:16. All days adorned for me were written in your book before one came to be. And that just always stuck with me, that God knows the day you're born. He knows the day you're going to take your last breath. That was always very comforting to me. I always knew that my grandmother had great faith, but it was proven one time that she really believed what she taught us. She was a little bitty woman, very meek. And one day when in the mid to late, well, about the mid-70s, she was in her kitchen, home alone, and she came into their living room, which connected to their bedroom. Well, a strange young man came out of her bedroom. He had been in there going through drawers. He had her pocketbook in his hand and a knife. She immediately hit her knees and started praying, and he just dropped everything and left. And later on, we were all talking about that, and her pastor said, "What prayer or scripture of protection were you praying?" And she looked at him real puzzled and said, "I wasn't praying for protection because I knew if it was my appointed time, it was my appointed time. I was praying for this young man's salvation because he was the one that needed the prayer." And that just really has stuck with me my whole life, that God really does know the first breath you're going to take and the last breath. And it just always, that has always been my go-to. The book of Psalms is my book. If I can find anything in that book for any situation, and it's easy reading to me, it's very clear reading to me. So I always refer back to it. If you have no other book of the Bible but Psalm, you can make it through life. When we received the call at 3:26 a.m. on May 23rd, 2009, my world stopped, but God's promise did not. Jerry and I were in shock, and we did not speak more than a dozen words to each other in the 2-hour ride from Tennessee to Spartanburg. We've talked about that ride many times since then and about why we didn't talk. And we've come to realize that we were both praying the same prayer. We both had immediate peace when we got that phone call that our brown-eyed girl was with God. But we were concerned about each other. And we were both praying coming down the road that we had the strength to help the other one get through this, that we had the strength to keep our lives together and to do God's will. When we got to the hospital, we were surrounded by family. And they were, of course, all praying for us. And while we were trying to hold it together, we, of course, were raw and just like we had been split open. At that time, for some reason, everything that anyone said to me, it was like it was feeding straight into my heart and into my memory. And I realize now that it was God filling up a well for me that I was going to need over the next years. And when we talked to the first doctor, because they had to do several tests before they could declare Holly. And the first time he went in and did the brain activity test, she did flinch. So therefore, we had to have 2 more before they could declare her gone. But the doctor sat down with us, and he said, "It is my belief that the moment, this very second, the bullet left that gun, that Holly was in heaven with God." He said, "I think what we saw was just a different, just the body reacting the way bodies react when they're dying." And it made me think back to 2 Corinthians, absent from the body, present with God. It happens just that quick. And even in the days that I was in, God was confirming my faith. He was confirming that it only took 26 years and 1 month for Holly's story to be written. Other things happened before she died that I can only look back now and realize that it was God giving me the strength and the faith that I needed. On her birthday, which is April the 23rd, I found a blog on the computer of a family in North Carolina that their 3-year-old son had been ran over by a riding lawnmower that the grandfather was driving. And every day for that month, I would go on and read that blog that this father was writing almost as an obsession, because every day he would ask people to pray for his son and his father, and he would give scriptures that proved that, God is good, God is faithful. And I realized after Holly died that I needed that. And so God was giving me what I needed even before my child went to be with him. A few days after the service, I was taking a flower from the mortuary in the funeral to my dad, who was in a nursing home. And as I was getting out of the car, I saw an older gentleman coming across the parking lot, and I had seen him many times down there. I knew his wife was a resident, but we had never talked. We'd just, nod at each other and make eye contact. Well, he came all the way across the parking lot, and it was obvious he was coming to me. And when he got there, he said, "Those are just absolutely beautiful flowers. They look like they're from a funeral, though." He said, "Can I ask what happened?" So I told him. And he said, "Do you mind if I pray with you? Because I am a retired preacher." And I said, "No, not at all." So we prayed, standing there in the parking lot of that nursing home. And he also said to me, "Don't let anyone tell you any different. Only God knows what was going on between he and Holly at the moment she pulled that trigger." And so there again, God was giving me what I needed before I even knew that I needed it. Music has always been very important to Holly and to us. We can tie any occasion back to a song. In along about 6 months to a year after we lost Holly, a friend of mine brought me a Jason Crabb CD, and the song she wanted me to hear was "I Sure Miss You." It was a song that his dad had written for a family member that had passed away, and Jason Crabb had recorded it. So the song was beautiful and it meant a lot to us, but we listened to the rest of the CD. And one of the songs on that CD was "Through the Fire, the victory is made strong. God never promised that the cross would not get heavy, but he would always be there on time." Those are not exact words, but that's what the song means to me. And I think that's when it dawned on me that my child had always had a lot of faith. She was a lot like my grandmother, and she would do anything to make other people even at the cost of her own self. So I could not let her death, especially her death, the way it was, become a tragedy. There had to be good that came from it, because that's what she was good. So we have done several things, and music has become very important to us. Because our whole mood, our whole faith can be renewed just by a song. One of the things that really made us know it was a God thing was a couple of years after that, Jason Crabb came to a local church to perform at Christmas, and we went. And I'm not a outgoing person by nature. I have to be comfortable with someone before I am. And I would never approach someone like him. But after he had performed, Jerry and I were standing in line to buy a CD. Well, he walked up to the counter, and it was just a God thing. I leaned over and told him that his music probably had saved our life, had saved our marriage, and had saved our faith. And so he pulled us over to the side and said, "Can you tell me the story?" And we did. And he said, "Oh, I can't wait to get to heaven to meet her." And to me, that's just, God is faithful. So we have to keep the faith. We have to believe. I don't know how people go day to day who don't believe. But we went on after that, and different things would come up. And a friend of mine gave me a book. It's called God Winks, and it tells stories about how things are not coincidences, that it is God's plan, that, if you're late for work one day and the building caught on fire, it's because God didn't mean for you to be in that building when it caught on fire. And it just was so comforting to us. It was, if you're very young in your faith, it was a very good book to read, because it proves out God doesn't make any mistakes. We may not understand the reasoning, but he doesn't make any mistakes. I had to learn to pray, to be outgoing, to be outspoken, to do things like this, because this is not in my nature. I also prayed to be a sponge, to absorb anything anyone said to me, because I was realizing more times than not, any situation that arose, I was able to go back to something I had heard or learned in my faith and draw from it to help me move on. I have done several blogs. I enjoy blogging, but I do better with a lead journal type situation as far as faith. One of my favorites was, let me find the name. The Journal Through Grief by Alan Wolfelt. It was one that I used very early on, and it brought a lot of things to light. It gave you lots of food for thought. So if you ever feel that you need to study the Bible or pray or work on your faith, it's always good to have some leadership. One that I am doing now, strangely enough, is written by one of Holly's best friends. It is Push. It's a 21-day challenge to get closer to God. It's just very simple terms, but I've really enjoyed it. It's by Ivy Gray. Another book that I have read is Hope in the Dark. I have really enjoyed it. I do study my Bible, and I do keep my faith alive that way. But myself, I guess I'm ADD. I have to have lots of things to draw from. I can't just do one thing. There are days that it is still very raw, but there are days that I am grateful for. Strangely enough, I'm grateful for the pain, because it has allowed me to reach out to people that I never would have before, either for me to draw strength from them or for me to be helpful, hopefully, to them. There's a saying about you know, people are memorable, or, you know, some people you're glad to see them come into your life, some people you're glad to see them go, and some you want to hang around. I want to be that person that people want to hang around. I want to be that uplifting person, because I don't want this to be a tragedy. If I can share my faith, then I want to do that. Do I wish that Holly were still here? I do. But I also had a real good friend tell me if she could come back, if she could come right back and everything be wonderful, she wouldn't leave where she's at for anything. And you wouldn't ask her to, because she's happy and whole, and why would anybody want to come back here? I guess that's about all that I have to say, but I do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. I do hope that maybe I said something that will help you. My email is yayamary@icloud.com. If you would like to reach out, I would love to hear from you. And as always, my verse is Psalm 34:18. I hope you have a great day.